Welcome back to another edition of Zero Blog 30. Today we have four.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
We got four. We
Yeah.
have 4 rounds in the magazine. I want to start off with, did you know you can catch a nuclear submarine with a fishing line?
I did not know.
Apparently you can, and that is exactly what happened up in the Norwegian seas this past week.
Okay.
Yeah. Round number 2, drunk military couple over in the UK. And they're horny over there. They're so horny.
Oh, they're horny.
They get caught having sex in an Apache cockpit.
Yeah, talk about a cockpit.
Uh-huh.
That's what she called her vagina.
That's right. Marine emails entire battalion trying to sell his car. This reminded me one of my favorite CBT episodes where we did a deep dive on Marine Corps PFC Chris Hushmond. Remember him?
No.
He skipped the entire chain of command and emailed the commandant directly. Do you remember
that
guy?
Yeah. Or was it the sergeant major? Was it the sergeant major?
He went to the commandant. Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah, it reminded me of that. I just thought that was funny. And then finally, I have a good initiative. Is it bad judgment? A story about a mom who got arrested and had CPS called on her because of a parenting choice she made. And it's kind of a little bit of a debate. So
I want to talk about that because I have some questions for you two as fellow parents.
I figured you would. So we'll get into it that way. So a good initiative. You decide the judgment.
But before we get started, we owe our beloved Marine Corps, Kate, a world of congratulations. For the first time in the history of the United States military, a branch of service passed their audit.
Yep.
And which is crazy. We've been around for a while. The DoD, Department of War, has been around for a long time. For it to be the first time that you pass a audit, however, the entire DoD is short, wait for it, $1 trillion.
How?
How can anything cost $1 trillion?
Well, I don't know that it's one thing. It's probably a collection of things. But how do we just accept, we're off by $1 trillion? That's a made-up number.
I'm pretty sure that's 2%, or that's the entire, I think the whole budget is $2 trillion.
For the
$1
DoD?
trillion.
Well, let's get into, since we're talking about it, the Pentagon is the largest U.S. federal agency, obviously, responsible for roughly half of the government's annual discretionary spending, with a yearly budget approaching $1 trillion, despite longstanding concerns about the department's inability to account for vast sums of money approved by, and it's got to, all that stuff's got to get approved. So it's like, it's not like there's no oversight on it or anything. And then on Friday, the DoD came out. The Pentagon has 4.1 trillion in assets, but we're the only major federal agency that has never passed a clean audit as required by law. Like, they have to be passing these, but they never have. And they were wildly off this time. What do you think about this? Bernie Sanders introduced an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act that would require the Pentagon to return a portion of its budget to the Treasury for failing audits. Like, they would get fined, just like I fuck up my taxes, I have to pay the government a huge chunk. He's saying the same thing. You fuck up, you can't pass these audits, send it back to the government.
Will absolutely never happen.
Never happen.
And you know why?
It's a decent idea.
You know why it'll never happen? Because Bernie Sanders is the most feckless legislator maybe in the history of the United States. He's been a senator for over 20 years. I think longer than that, since like 1978 or something crazy, like either in the House or the Senate. And he has never passed a primary bill that he's the author of.
That's crazy.
He's been co-authors of a couple that are small, like he's been involved in like renaming of post offices and shit like that technically counts. But Bernie Sanders is absolutely feckless. Like,
that's there was the epitome of did no work but got an A on the group project.
Yeah, like there was this every single, like, he put up this bill, or proposal. I guess it is a bill. He put up this bill that wanted every single veteran at the VA to get access to dental care, because dental care, it goes throughout your whole body, your bloodstream, everything like that.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, let's start with people that are 60% disabled. Like, there was a group that was like 60% would be okay for us. He wanted everybody, and he wouldn't budge on that. Yeah. Like, he makes perfect the enemy of good. more than any other legislator that I can think of.
Yeah.
And I'm like his policies, I'm a fan of. Like, but he's like, get him out of here. He's feckless.
So we're not getting that money back. We're not. But yeah, it's just an enormous amount of. My question is like, what is their motivation to pass this audit? Because nothing happens, right?
Right.
Every year
No,
they
that's a
don't
great
pass,
point, Kate.
and who gives a shit?
We've never been penalized. Chaps, when you said the Marines did it for the first time ever for the DOD, that blew my mind. I would have thought at some point we had our books straight and maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, it went sideways and we couldn't get back on track. But for the fact that it's never been done tells me something is wrong. And the fact that nobody seemingly has cared to make a correction is wild. It's absurd.
Your first reaction was like, that's okay. And then I was like, ever, dude, ever. And you're like, whoa, that's totally different.
Well, here's some points from it. About 58% of the material the Pentagon possesses, 36.9 billion worth, are items it does not need. This is one of the findings. Wow. And I just am thinking about, you go to any military base and there are endless parking lots full of Connex boxes that are full of gear and shit that haven't been opened since 1958 and blah, 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 blah. And every now and then we would do just like a unit audit or like a what's on this lot audit. And it was like an episode of where they go to the storage wars or whatever. You open it up, you're like, what the fuck's in here? And it's like a $50 million robot or something. You're like, oh shit, who knew we had this?
Dude,
when I was to me is that the company level, when you do a change of command, the inventory you have to do when a new commander comes in and is taking charge of all this equipment. I mean, if you're missing one pencil sharpener, they will go to the ends of the earth.
Whoever
to find
signed
this
it out,
thing. Right? Or you will ultimately go buy a new one. So how does that not trickle up to the highest
level? Listen to this. Over the past 3 years, the Navy lost track of $3 billion in equipment and other items, like just unaccounted for. And you have to wonder, like, we had a corporal trying to sell MVGs on eBay. Like, how much of this is just like general fuck up and like people who just suck at keeping track of things? And how much, like, you got to wonder how much shit is like, hey, nobody's keeping track. I'm just going to sell some of this shit on the side. Like, I'm sure it's the former rather than the latter, but the latter has to be happening. This is like a security issue, right?
Yeah. And think about how much $2 billion really is. Like, I think we've gotten to the place where if a DOD expenditure is over $1 billion, you're like, whatever. $1 billion, man. We're talking $1 billion. $1 billion. That's so much money just to be wasted. And I don't know how in the world they come up with 1 trillion. You need $1 trillion?
It's just made up.
It's fake. Like, there's this guy, Brian Johnson, I believe his name is, and he does these TikTok series that I absolutely love, where he talks about like astrophysics and like the universe. And he kind of explains the difference of like $10, $100, 1,000, all the way up to $1 billion. Once you start talking about $1 billion and you see that cash lined up, like comparatively to $1 million, you're like, holy shit, man.
It's astronomical, the amount.
And then go up to trillion. Can't even imagine.
I can't help but feeling too, like, and I know this is probably dumb. A smart person would be like, well, actually, blah, blah, blah. But I do have that feeling, and I saw other people saying this online, the same feeling I get when like a PFC would get destroyed for losing their cat card. And then an officer like drunk drives into a tree and it's like, oh, you're fine. Like, it's a slap on the wrist. Like, if I fuck up my taxes, I'm fucked. I get in so much trouble. Like, there's so much consequences that will probably put me in the hole for decades. And yet these major government institutions can just be reckless and it doesn't matter. Like, nothing happens to anybody. And I don't know. I would think that's crazy.
What level do you think that happens at? It's definitely not platoon. It's definitely not company. It's definitely not battalion. You get regiment, maybe, where the regimental commander is like, like whatever, all the battalions are good. And then they don't.
You know what the problem is there's probably, I don't know. I could maybe find out and ask some people. There's probably a little room for error where you can be within the designated what's the expression I'm looking for? I can't think of it right now. But you can be off by a certain amount and that's acceptable.
Yeah.
And then when you extrapolate that out across the entire Army, across the entire DOD, that's, I think, where you start to get these numbers, because it's like, oh, okay, well, you're within the accepted range of $1 million, let's say. Cool. Well, if you start doing that and then that happens every year, I think that's where you get these massive numbers. So
trillion. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just so crazy. All right, let's move on to round number 1. What do we have here, Katie?
Okay, so for round number 1, fisherman catches nuclear sub. This comes to us from Vice. I didn't know Vice was still around.
I had no idea
I didn't
either.
know, but it is. Anyways, first I looked up, because you know me, I got to tie everything in. Remember I was like looking up military fishing stories. 2 important notes. If you love bass fishing, you got to go to Fort Huachuca.
Oh.
Okay. Fort Benning on the Chattahoochee, Fort Huachuca, or Fort Drum.
I am absolutely shocked that you didn't start singing it there.
Way down river on the Chattahoochee, never knew muddy water man to learn learn a lot about living and a little about love.
Down by the river on a Friday night.
That's the only reason I brought that up.
Oh, perfect. And it's not Alan Jackson, but I'm wearing
a country Billy
Ray Cyrus shirt.
Yep.
Kate, check out what the back says.
What does it say?
It's awesome.
Some gave all.
Yeah.
It's got lyrics. So the September 11th Billy Ray Cyrus shirt.
Yeah.
Okay.
My wife found it at a vintage shop. She was like, I don't know why, but this just screamed you.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you're right.
Does.
Yeah, that's on brand.
It's accurate.
Yeah. Anyway, so do either of you fishing? You grew up fishing?
No.
I grew up fishing.
Yeah.
I haven't
I
been
can
in
count
a long
on one
time.
hand how many times I've been fishing in my life.
Oh, my grandfather lived by by St. John's River, and he was a pastor forever. And he lived pretty close to the river. And there was this dude at the end of the road, and his name, I always called him Mr. H.I. Jackson. He was like a real estate guy. His house was so big that the University of Georgia football team had stayed there whenever they were going to play Georgia and Florida game. Well, he had a huge dock, all kinds of fishing poles. And because my granddad was this pastor, he was like, send Matthew down anytime you want to. He can come out and I'll have him out. He had like an indoor pool in Florida and an outdoor pool that was screened in. And this was like in the 80s, man.
Yeah.
And they had this big tarp that was automatic that would go over the screen door because I was such a pasty kid and I would get sunburned. So he would put that up when I came over.
No way.
It was awesome.
Cute.
Shout out Mr. H.I.
Shout out Mr. H.I. We got to get down there and see if we can mooch off the land for a little bit.
Yeah, he's been dead for like 30 years.
Oh.
So yeah. And he always gave me double mint gum.
I'll be damned.
Love those.
I grew up fishing a little bit. Get the hoagies, sit on the side of the lake, reeling, and
let that mayonnaise get all hot.
Let that mayonnaise get warm in the foil. And then I took bluegill fins under the fingernails, and I said, I guess that's it for me. No, thank you, no more.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is much larger scale than those things that were inconsequential.
Well, maybe not. Mr. H.I.'s off. Get out of town.
So, Norwegian fishermen on a little fishing boat. They're off the coast of Tromsø. Longtime stoolies off the Norwegian coast in Tromsø.
Right by Terre Haute.
And they're on their vessel named Oygut, looking for halibut, as one does. And
I think that was an incredible pronunciation of that.
Thank you. They throw out, those big trawling nets, those endless, they go like forever, these nets. And then the boat will go forward and let the net out forever and ever and ever. So they do that. And they're like, oh, we got something big. They catch something and they start kind of drifting with it. And they're like, whoa, what's going on here? Turns out they had caught the USS Virginia, a 115-meter long nuclear-powered attack submarine outfitted with cruise missiles.
Hell yeah.
At first, the ship's crew had no idea that the USS Virginia had been dragging it for 2 nautical miles before the crew realized. I don't know how you don't realize, but I guess when you're out at sea,
it's so strong, right? Like it's not like that will stop it.
And I guess if you're way out at sea and you can't really tell how far and fast you're drifting, maybe. Like,
I am surprised that there's not like sensors.
I was surprised that this is like the most high-tech submarine in the world.
Yeah.
And even they were like, they had no idea they were dragging these fishermen.
And as a former physical security specialist, that there are like technology that you can put on a fence that you could tell when people touch it.
Yes, absolutely. I can't believe we didn't have that. But anyway, they're going 2 nautical miles before the crew realized, oh shit, we are like attached to something that like we're never going to be able to haul up whatever. I mean, I'm thinking they thought they had like a fucking whale or something on that. And they end up having to cut the sub loose, which those nets too are like, that shit is crazy expensive. They had to cut the whole net. So what had happened was the USS Virginia was sailing right near the surface and its propeller just sucked it up kept going. They had no idea. They finally figured it out. And the fishermen, the submarine had to call the U.S. Coast Guard, who had to get a hold of the fishermen and be like, time out, stop trying to pull this thing. The embassy in Oslo later confirmed the incident, that the submarine was operating in the area. The U.S. Navy uses the waters around Norway as a hub for resupply and crew changes in NATO's ongoing surveillance of Russian naval activities. Because I like had to look on the map because this didn't make sense to me. I was like, why are we up in Norway watching Russia? I forgot that Russia touches Finland, which is right next to which is like, and
Russia. It's weird when you think about where countries are in the world, because we're just so used to looking at a flat map, and your brain, I think, just doesn't comprehend like where things actually are. Because also maps are adjusted for scale and things of that nature too. So that's also part of the reason why I enjoy Chaps' videos when he gets going with geography, because those always mess people up.
And Russia is huge anyway. It's like huge. And Eurasia. It's like both.
You forget there's a massive, massive sea. It's not just ice above Russia that goes up until you get to the North Pole ice. There is a massive sea in there above Russia and Norway and Finland and all that stuff. I'm like shocked by this because I just was looking on the map and I was like, what the fuck? Russia touches Finland? And they use this little peninsula right next to Finland to go up and out and around and into the Atlantic. And that's why we're always lurking up in Norway and we're hanging out up there. We're seeing what they're doing.
Well, you're in luck, Kate. If you want to know more about Norway, my other podcast, we're going to do a deep dive on Norway in 2 weeks.
Oh, that's fun.
I bet there's all sorts of fun facts about Norway.
Especially getting close to Christmas, because I feel like Santa hangs out up there.
A dude rode from Norway all the way to Iceland. A group of 6.
Like in a kayak?
In like a long kind of boat like the Vikings used to have a little bit.
Okay. All right.
Crazy.
Hell yeah. No, I wouldn't survive a day. This is not the first time this has happened. In June of 1984, a Soviet submarine got trapped by Norwegian fishermen. So these fishermen in Norway are prolific submarine catchers. This fishing boat was attached to the submarine for 3.5 hours before they figured it out. And this led me to the question, if at close range, subs don't really feel what's going on, have 2 submarines ever run into each other? I mean, the ocean is so incredibly massive. The odds are so slim. Do you guys think, I'm sure you're looking at the sheet, have 2 submarines ever accidentally ran into each other in the massive, massive ocean?
I am looking at this the sheet, but I would have said no.
I would have said no too.
Yes, they have.
But I mean, it makes sense because those things don't exactly stop on a dime. But they also have radar. How do you not know?
They have That's what I'm thinking. They have radar, sonar, or whatever.
Well, I guess
they don't have windows.
True.
I guess the radar only works a certain distance out. So if you're very close to each other, it doesn't pick it up. You'd think, though, with the technology, how?
Maybe that's different in... No, because this is in 2009, right?
Yeah, 2009. So
I don't know, man. I got sensors on my car that tell me if I'm getting too close to another car on the highway. You would think subs would have something similar.
Yeah, late at night, February 2009, crew of the French submarine Triomphant experienced a shock.
Again.
138 meter long sub. It's going along when all of a sudden they're in the East Atlantic. Something violently hits the bow and the sail, like I guess the top part of it. If that's me, I'm like, I'm dead. I guess I'm fucking dead now. Like,
I mean, think about how much like a car crash. Boom, 238 feet submarines, not subways. Submarines crash into each other. You'd be sitting on your rack beating off, and the next thing you know, you're at the hull.
Well, so this is crazy too. Even still, after the crash, they were like, what the fuck was that? Like, we have no idea what the fuck that was. 3 days later, the French Ministry of Defense puts out a report that the submarine hit something. They thought it was a shipping container, because every year, like, thousands of shipping containers fall off boats and they're like, they're like out in the sea or whatever. I never thought of that as like a hazard to submarines, but they're like, it must have been a shipping container. Holy shit. And the British government was like paying attention to the news, like, oh, interesting. One of our submarines had a crash that same night at that same time. And they put the pieces together. The HMS Vanguard.
They didn't even know?
A British Royal Navy submarine also had a collision that evening, 150 meters long, 16,900 tons when submerged.
You're doing great today. That was a big number, and you're fucking crushing it,
As
Katie.
I was reading, I wasn't sure. Basically, they did run into each other. No crew was harmed. Through the repairs cost 50 million pounds for each submarine. The French submarine was so close to imploding. it took a massive chunk out of the front of the British submarine was very close to imploding. The French one took a huge chunk out of the front of the submarine and down the side of the boat. The high pressured air bottle groups were hanging off and banging against the pressure hull. If one of them had exploded, it would have created a chain reaction that would have sent the submarine to the bottom immediately. Damn. They were like this close to having a whole ass nuclear sub like shoot right to the fucking bottom. Crazy.
That is crazy.
I'm telling you, man, anything out at sea where these ships, you see these videos of the treacherous ocean they're dealing with, subs where you can't see what the heck is going on around you. All of that is so incredibly scary, in my opinion.
You couldn't pay me. You could be like the 500,000 a year to be on a sub, and like I don't want any. Like you couldn't pay me enough. I don't think I would never.
Especially when they go out for 6 months. You remember that story during COVID when they were out for like a year?
Yeah,
because they couldn't get relieved and they weren't telling the people why, because they were so deep that they couldn't even get communications. One, not being able to talk to your spouse, that's like World War II shit.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy town that you can't do that. Then they finally came up and they had no idea that COVID was going on and they all thought it was a joke.
I would love to hear from somebody who was on a sub like that. What the fuck was that like?
I think that'd be interesting.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was submarine talk. I'm fascinated by him.
I know that's crazy. I would have said no for sure. But 2 big ones that would definitely suck.
Yep.
Now let's talk about a different kind of sucking.
Sex in the cockpit.
Talking
sex in the cockpit.
Yeah.
Some people there are people who like get off on having sex like on their balcony where other people can see or in their window next to the High Line in New York. Like
exhibitionist is one of the main fetishes.
Like some people fucking love that shit. I don't want anybody to see my crumpled ass body fucking grinding. I don't want it. It's also not pretty.
They're gonna have to be quick with the camera to get me in.
Oh, you're fat. You're like a jackhammer?
Hell yeah. What? I'm like Michael Lewis.
Okay.
Anyway.
Most Marines are.
Ground crew were reportedly headed to put rain covers on an Apache. So let me set the scene.
Okay.
Rainy night on a military base. They're like, fuck, we got to cover up these Apaches. This group goes running out with their tarp. They're like, this Apaches are rocking. Should we come a knocking? They do. What do they find?
And then right after they do it, they're standing outside in the rain like, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want?
Well, the ground crew runs out and they hear an air safety guard revealed it became apparent the rear cockpit was occupied by 2 people engaged in sexual intercourse. Both parties were serving soldiers. Both showed symptoms of intoxication. It's reported that the pair were naked from the waist down, one being a man in military uniform, the other a civilian, other in civilian clothing.
That's a twist.
So I'm thinking he was on duty. He wanted some booty.
Oh,
he called his gal.
Booty duty.
She came and he was like, I know just where we can do it. Cockpit of this Apache.
It's got to be better places.
I'll say this. It is really hard to get your boots and stuff back on quickly.
Boot bands.
Taking off your boots and all that stuff to get your pants off. That's commitment. He must really like this girl.
Did you wear the spring boot bands?
Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Was there any other kind?
Motivator. Yeah, the cloth kind that were green and little weenie ones for pussies.
Oh, you're older than me. I never seen those.
Oh, damn.
Ancient.
That can't be true.
I've never seen another kind besides the springy with the 2. Anyway, the couple were ordered out of the helicopter, which belongs to the Army Air Corps 653rd Squadron. The soldiers caught having sex in the aircraft were thought to be from a different unit in the artillery.
Oh shit.
So that's a bold move because I feel like whatever unit you're in, that's kind of your home turf. You know, like everybody has their own headquarters battalion and it's almost like their own little camp on the base. And you know it like the back of your hand. But like I would never venture to like over to 3.6s, whatever. And like it's kind of like
dangerous. It's not
turf.
Yours. Yes.
Yeah, there's people on
1000%.
duty. There's like whatever. So they had to be pretty fucked up to be like, let's hop the fence onto a fucking airfield, first of all, and go do this. They were detained until their parent unit arrived. Imagine sitting there waiting for your.
Imagine getting ordered out. It would probably be like that time in boot camp where they were like, recruit, where the fuck is your penis?
Yeah.
Like you get out.
That's tough. The aircrew were later ordered to ensure the Apaches were locked down in the future so no one else could bang inside them. These are U.S., by the way. They just the Britain recently bagged a fleet of 50 top-of-the-range Apache helicopters from us. By the way, also, this was the kind of Apache that Prince Harry was in, which, as a lady, that would also get me going a little bit to think, am I getting banged
You're
on the
technically
same seat Harry sat on?
Are you an Eskimo sister at that point? Helicopter
What does
Eskimo
that
sister?
mean?
You never heard Eskimo, brother?
Oh,
I've
you never heard
that.
Eskimo?
I don't like that. I've heard.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. No, I know what it is.
Yeah, talking a little bit of cream pie.
But anyway, I just thought that was kind of fun. I wonder if they're still
listen,
together.
I think growing up, movies and TV had you believe that, having intercourse in weird places was this cool, exciting, fun thing.
Yeah.
In reality, there's not a lot of room in an Apache cockpit to be doing any sort of maneuvers.
That's right. People romanticize it. Actually, probably not as fun as it seemed. A lot of hard metal things sticking
joysticks all over the place.
Yeah, a lot of joysticks.
It's probably dirty.
Next
greasy.
thing you know, you're doing reverse cowgirl on a joystick.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do that.
Who among us?
Yeah.
This does bring to mind a movie that had the hottest, on big equipment sex scene to me. Backdraft. When they're all
I was thinking that when they do it on the
top of the fire
engine.
truck, they're banging on top of the fire truck on the hoses. The fire truck gets a call, and next thing you know, they're going through town, and they're like, "What?" Yeah, that's it.
I thought you're gonna say Pauly Shore's son-in-law, where they fucking a big tractor.
Oh, and the tractor, that too.
Yeah, that would also be terrible. By the way, pants down reminded me. I heard this phrase this weekend that you guys with young kids should definitely use.
Okay.
We need to take a potty pause.
Potty pause.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do a potty pause. Like, all right, let's do it.
Well, what we do, because my son gets FOMO, my 3.5-year-old. So when he tells me he has to say we're all downstairs hanging out and having fun, I go, everybody time out. Everybody stop having fun. Cash has to go upstairs, use the bathroom real quick. Nobody move. And so we all kind of freeze until he's up out of our sight. And then when he comes back down, we're like, time back in. Okay, everybody. So he doesn't, because he would pee his pants if he was really having fun. He would rather piss his pants than miss the moment. Yeah. So I'm like, everybody freeze.
That's why his friends at daycare call him Miles Davis.
They do. I just had to drop off 2 pairs of pants today. Anyway.
All right. What do we got next?
This one, this was a super quick one. But I'm always looking on the military Reddit pages because sometimes the best little stories come out.
Yeah.
And somebody put, some PFC just sent an all hands email trying to sell his car. I can only imagine the hell he has created. I have received hundreds of emails asking to be removed. And I had seen a buzz on Twitter about this too. I guess it was a PFC who sent out to the entire Marine Corps. And there's some other screenshots in there too, but the make and model and whatever seeing. And I don't know if he just meant to send it to his unit, but he sent it to the entire Marine Corps. And
honestly, that's an IT issue from the Marine Corps. No PFC should have that ability.
Correct.
They should block you from speaking to anybody battalion commander and above.
You should not even have the ability to make that mistake.
Yeah.
Most people shouldn't. Not even just
help them
PFC
out.
level. Yeah.
Because I mean, how many dummies are there that don't even know how to use email?
Right.
Well, that reminded me, and
sorry, really quickly. This happens at every company too. Even at Barstool, we get company-wide emails, and I'm always flabbergasted when people who I won't name names, but they reply all. It's a completely different button. Why would you reply all to a company-wide email? It blows my mind that people still do that.
I used to do it when Barstool was 25 people. When it was very small, I did it.
Yeah.
Well, someone here got in trouble because they sent on a dare, they sent the whole Barstool Chicago office a Lego figure with giant Lego tits. And they got in big trouble for it. And now none of us are able to. We have to ask Paige to send an email to the whole company because we got that revoked. But it reminded me of this story. We have an episode somewhere here in the ZBT world. And I was trying to find that story. The original story is so fucking funny. And I couldn't find it. I was looking up. Chris Hushmand was this guy's name. And he said, I emailed the commandant once. 3 hours later, I was placed in a car and driven around base getting yelled at by every E8 and above. Nothing but good times at 29 Palms. And his story, though, fuck. Do
you want me to put that in the episode? I could replay it.
If you can find it, it was the funniest fucking thing. And I remember some of it, chilling in my buddy's barracks room, slamming some mac and cheese, and he just got the itch to email the fucking. And I think
probably drinking some Hornsby's.
I think it was because they were just hanging out, and somebody was like, "Do you think we could just email the commandant?" And he's like, "Fuck it, let's see." And next thing you know, like all hell broke loose and it was yada yada. But the story's so good. But anyway, that was just a quick round. I just really love that Submarine emailed the whole Corps trying to sell his car.
You think he sold it?
Probably.
Hopefully to the commandant.
Yeah, hopefully
That'd be
to the
amazing.
commandant.
I sold my old car to my Master Guns when I was leaving Okinawa.
Really?
Yeah. And then they called it the Master Guns Mobile.
The old Master Guns.
They should have called it the Corporal car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it was mine first. That was the same one that he treated me like shit because he was a Master Guns and only had like 4 ribbons.
Yeah.
4 or 5 ribbons and medals. He looked like, because he had spent so much time in Okinawa doing dumb shit.
Yeah.
He looked like such a boot. Master Guns with 5. Get out of
Master
town.
Gun. You have to be.
Sorry,
at that point.
that just made me think of a tangent really quickly. For the last 20 years, we won't get into the whole global war on terror, but by default, everybody, for the most part, across the military, like did stuff, right? And that was like seen as like a badge of honor to have a deployment under your belt. I wonder what the shift is going to be like now when there's not just a guarantee that you're going to deploy. You might serve your entire time in the military across all branches and never see combat. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays itself out the next few years in the military.
Hopefully it makes the grunt community better. Because those motherfuckers are the worst. I just think they know everything about everything. It's just so annoying. Like your service doesn't matter unless you are a grunt. Just dumb shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if all of us don't do any war stuff, then it won't matter.
It's a little toxic.
Yeah, just a
little bit.
Just a little bit. All right, what's next?
So when I was a kid, my parents were very, very strict. Like I couldn't watch like Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles and like church every Sunday, CCD, like down the Jersey Shore when we were like on this super safe island. All my cousins could stay out till whatever. I still had to be home at 8. Like my parents were like very strict.
Harry Potter's demonic.
At the same time, in the summer, like when we were on summer break, as soon as the sun was up, my mom was like, bye, see you at sunset. Like hop on your bikes.
Come back before the lights get on.
And I remember being like 10, 11 and riding our bikes like so fucking far, like miles and miles to get to like a corner store to buy Yoo-hoo, but we're on the side of like a major fucking highway, like or we're in the woods on some we were definitely on like private properties and farm, like we would just go out.
Yes. We did all of this without a cell phone and no way to locate where we were.
And like on a Little Mermaid bike with a banana seat. Like I would go like 10 miles
that
round
sounds
trip.
sick.
Fucking, it was awesome. It was the best. But like we really, really, and we would go on super long walks and like we went very far from our house and whatever. And it was fine. Nobody ever pulled over or had a problem or blah, blah, blah. I feel like also too, as a parent now, I feel like if you're not right on top of your kids, helicoptering them 24/7, you get judged. Even on the playground, it's like groups of parents just hovering within 3 feet of their kids. Even my son, my toddler, like older kids. And you feel like you're kind of getting judged a little if you don't. They say that's really bad for kids' psychology. Like you got to give them space to roam or whatever. But like, or say we were out in public somewhere and I wasn't like right on top of them. I feel like people would be like, okay, shithead, go get your kid. Like there's this culture here of you have to be right on top of your kids now. Otherwise, blah, 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 blah. And it's really intense. Like I feel it now as a parent. So anyway.
Not to mention in the 1930s, you have pictures of like 8-year-olds that are chilling in a coal mine, ripping
ripping heaters. Yeah. So anyway, a mother was charged after deputies said her child walked less than a mile to the store from their North Georgia home. Fannin County deputies were called to the area of Mineral Bluff Highway and Georgia 60, longtime stories there, I don't know, regarding a child on the road. Witnesses told deputy they saw a young boy walking down the road and into Dollar General. When the witness asked the boy if he was okay, he said yes. She asked if he needed help. He said no. She asked where his parents were and what his mother's name was, and he told her she worked at the post office. Her name was Brittany Patterson, age 41. She asked if he needed help again, and he said, never mind, and then he ran behind a fire station. So at this point, he's like, we're in trouble now. Like, we have done something wrong. And so he's afraid, so he runs to hide.
Also, he's been told stranger danger.
Right. Yes. Deputies said they searched the area for the child and found him on Railroad Avenue, a little over a mile from his house. So they scared him. He ran even farther from the house then. And according to the report, the child seemed to be confused. When asked where he lived, he pointed in the direction of his house. They asked for his mom's name and number, but were only able to get her number. Like, they basically just scared the fuck out of this kid. They go to the house and they tell the mom, like, hey, we found your kid. And she's like, yeah, I sent him to the store. It's totally fine. She gets arrested.
Yeah, they come. I saw this video. The cops come up to her door. They ask him where the son is. She tells him where he is and that he does this kind of stuff all the time, that he just walks up there, he knows his way, and he can come back. And then they place her in cuff for child endangerment. That's crazy. It's just so far. Like, my kid will go down and like go several blocks, even like 2 miles in our little village here that we live in, and it's totally fine. You can't make your kids scared of everything. Like, you have to let them walk across streets. You have to let them go down and do some places. Otherwise, they establish no sense of independence at all.
And looking at pictures, like, she seems like a great mom. He seems like a happy kid.
Kids in New York take the fucking subway to work.
I was just thinking the same thing. I have a cousin who grew up in Manhattan. He was taking the subway by himself, probably by 10.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, so she had to post a $500 bond to get out. She was booked on suspicion of reckless conduct, and neglect by a parent can be defined as failure to provide a child with adequate supervision necessary for the child's well-being. Well, like, at what point? I feel like we've gone so far in the wrong direction where, like, maybe kids had a little too much. Maybe I shouldn't have been on the side of the highway in a banana seat bike, but like, we've gone so far in the other direction that I just think that's crazy. There was another story out of Connecticut that was similar that I remember from last year, where a mom let her 2 tweens walk to Dunkin' Donuts that was about a mile away.
I remember that story. Yeah.
And she got arrested too. It's like, what? Like,
the government's too involved with parenting.
Yeah, what
just
the
too
fuck?
involved with like everything.
It's just crazy. I just thought that this was crazy, and I thought, good initiative, good judgment on her part to let him go to the store if he whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I do work, like, you have to teach your kids like stranger danger. Like, there are dangers out there, but I was reading another story about the psychology of kids who have parents hovering over them 24/7 constantly and never having the freedom to do whatever. And it's not good. It's
and
not
like
good.
with Cardi, I think you do responsible parenting by, I gave them the directions of which roads to take, tell them that these are the only roads that you're allowed to take to get where they want to go. I rode my bike like 2 or 3 times with them, let them lead so I could see that it was there. And they have their phone with GPS on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's about as much as you can do and let your kid live and go down and get some ice cream by themselves.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
I think it's certainly situationally dependent. Like, there are probably neighborhoods, I'm going to venture to say, in Chicago where you wouldn't want your kids going by themselves. And I think
Or
that's
with me.
okay. Or with you. Yeah, even with you. But you have to use your judgment. I see kids around my neighborhood all the time, probably, in and around anywhere from 10 to 13 to 15 to high school, whatever, walking by themselves. And I think nothing of it. If you see the kid riding a bike on a highway, like Kate maybe mentioned, okay, maybe that's when you intervene and you're like, wait, what are you doing on a highway? Because no one told you otherwise. But you have to let them go. And I don't know that it's even like a hard and fast. It's like, okay, you're 10, you get to go start doing things by yourself. I think it's, again, situationally dependent, kid dependent, neighborhood dependent, and you got to use judgment as a parent, but not so far the other way.
This was small town Georgia.
And this woman said, last time I checked, it's not illegal for a kid to walk to the store. And the deputy said it is when they're 10 years old. And it's like,
where's that? Where's that law?
What statute is that?
And like, do you guys remember that Netflix show with the Japanese kids?
Yeah.
Who were like, 3 years old, and they would give them a mission to like go into the city and come back with a salmon or something like that. Yeah. And they would do it.
Well, Japan is a different animal because they're like, they are so protective of kids.
Yeah.
Like, they'll go, if any kid, highway or not, stands on the side of the road and just puts their little hand up in the air, the other cars will stop so they can cross the road safely. Like, they take care of their kids in a big way.
I will say it is scary. You hear stories about kids getting abducted. So, the idea of being in packs is much safer than maybe solo. So I get that. You hate that's a reality in the world that we live in, but it is. So hopefully, you don't have to deal with that. But I was curious what you guys thought of, because Maggie's not there yet. She's 16 months. She'll be 17 months here.
Yeah, she can't walk to the store by herself.
No, she cannot go to the store by herself yet. But at what age do you feel comfortable leaving your kids in a car by themselves to like run in and grab a Starbucks order, or run into the convenience store and get a roll of toilet paper or something? What's the age? Because I can remember being in the car and my mom running in the store to get milk. Now, I wasn't 16 months. I can remember being, I don't know, like 6, 7, 8, whatever that was. But what do you think is the age when that's appropriate?
But I feel like even now, if people saw like an 8-year-old
Yes.
sitting in the car, like
Right,
people
they'd be like,
smash
"Wait."
the windows and call the cops. Like it's
You're
very
right.
different now. It's a very
You're
different
right.
ball of wax.
I'm gonna say never.
Yeah.
Like that's
Wow.
one that I never have done, because I think you have like risk management, like if they come into the store with me, get your seatbelt off, let's go. How long does that possibly take? Now, I know like in the moment it feels like it takes a long time, but we're talking 30 seconds, like to get in. Like, I think it's a little different for Kate when you have two. Like that's a big pain in the ass.
Car seat age is tough, especially when they're not the best walkers and they're whatever. And sometimes like you really do need XYZ. And at this point now, though, I'm like, I guess there have been times I've called the coffee shop I used to go to and been like, I'll give you guys an extra tip. Can someone just run it out to my car for me? I'm right here. Like, please, for the love of fucking God.
Yeah.
And people are normally like, of course. Yeah, no big deal. Like, whatever. As long as I'm tipping extra, it's fine. But like, I don't either. There's times where my baby's in the car and I have to get out of the car and walk like 20 feet to get my son from daycare. And even then I still get him out. I'm so paranoid. I'm like, what if someone steals the car with them in it? Blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah, Cart's in middle school and I don't let them do it.
Yeah.
What you just said, Chaps, I also played in my head, what if I were to run into Starbucks and in that 26 seconds, something happened? I would be painted as a horrible parent. I might get arrested for child endangerment.
Definitely getting divorced.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my God. That'd be the worst part of it all. Having to come home and tell Alex what happened.
Well, probably the baby missing would be the worst, but that's an easy number 2.
Yes. True.
All right, let's move on to some save rounds and alibis. Cons, what's up?
A few things. Number one, big game for Army this week against Notre Dame. I'm excited about that, playing at Yankee Stadium, undefeated Army. No one's given us a chance, which is fine. I don't care. I know
that's so good for Army that nobody's giving you a chance. Munchin will be eating that alive. I'm sure he'll have like every single headline, tweets up, and things like that. Don't doubt the United States Army.
That's right. I can't wait to see that pregame locker room speech. Also, there's coming out on Friday. There's a Frank the Tank walks with 2 Army football players that he filmed.
Nice.
Previously, so that'll be cool to see. Army dropped our uniforms early for the Army Navy game. I don't know. I know, Chaps, you saw them. Kate, did you see them yet?
No, I have not. What's the story behind it this year?
101st Bastogne.
Hell
so
yeah.
they're all black.
Battle of the Bulge.
Battle of the Bulge.
Which happened in that Apache earlier.
That is true. There was quite not wrong. This is facts.
And speaking of Army Navy, Kate, I noticed you are wearing a sweatshirt.
America's game. It's America's game. I like the hoodies this year.
Yeah, I got a lot of compliments on that. I wore it yesterday.
This is the kind of classic, like I'll wear this the rest of my life. Probably. I love these kind.
Cons was upset in the group chat because I told him I didn't like this version of the Army uniform. And I was honest last year, the 2 years, I said that Army kicked the Navy's dick.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I will say this. You have always been honest. You haven't just poo-pooed armies because of me. You give your honest opinion, so you don't think they're great this year. I think more so than the appearance, excuse me, the story behind the 101st, and I said it in the blog that I wrote, what I think is cool is every year we do these uniforms and they honor a specific unit. If you're not a veteran, especially an Army veteran or a super big history buff, you really don't know any of these units. But I think because of Band of Brothers, a large swath of people know who the 101st are or were and what they did in World War II. So I think that aspect of it. And Nike and the Army, they always just do a good job with the different details that I find to be fun and cool. And I think they did a good job this year.
The only thing I don't really like about them is I feel like the little white specks on the shoulder pads and the shoulder. I think it looks like dandruff.
Yeah, it's on their helmets and their shoulders. It's supposed to represent the snow.
Yeah,
hopefully it snows, and then that
and
won't
it's
matter.
more. And as a dandruff guy, like
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, these folks need some
lint rollers.
Yeah, and some Head and Shoulders prescription probably.
Yeah. So, but that's always a fun thing. And then the last thing, speaking about our kids, so Maggie's in daycare all the time. She comes home from school, daycare, whatever you want to call it, and she's learning stuff. They're doing stuff with her all day, and she does stuff that I will admit, like Alex and I didn't teach her. So it's very beneficial that she's interacting with these other kids and being taught different things, specifically words and sign language, which is extremely helpful with a toddler to understand, what they want. So there was like a 2-week, this, more
all
food,
done.
all done. Yes, please. So specifically for 2 weeks, she was doing the please. And it was the cutest, like, peas. And then out of nowhere, when you say to her, okay, say please, she started saying P-O. And I have no idea what that means. She just diverted from saying please.
Never correct that, because when it goes away, you'll be so sad. Like McCartney, when we used to go to get ice cream in Texas, they would always ask me if we could go to Basketball Robbins. And I absolutely loved it.
That sounds like an old man's nickname. Like, let's go down to Basketball Robbins' house and see if he...
And Kelsey thought it was fro up instead of throw up, like fro up. And I thought forever that it's just because speech as a younger kid. And then when they got their first little iPad or iPod that they could text on back in the day, the iPod Touch, spelled it out fro up.
They really believed that it was.
It was great.
Yeah. Well, but it's funny because in her head, she's saying please. I just don't know how we 2 weeks we were saying peas, fine, and now P-O. So I'm confused by that.
Well, I have that with General Millie or Miley. I don't know.
That's true.
And I'll never know.
We all get mixed up a little.
I'll never know that ever.
Just hope she can say numbers.
Yeah.
So, all right, last thing. And this isn't political. This is kind of more towards what we were talking about in terms of how veterans and military people view one another in terms of their qualifications. So obviously Pete Hegseth, there's a lot of hullabaloo about his appointment as Secretary of Defense, whether he's going to be good or not. We don't need to get into that. But what I have seen in the veteran community, that the biggest knock on him is that he was an infantry officer without a Ranger tab. That's
a big deal for infantry guys.
Big deal for infantry guys. If you don't have to be, in a Ranger unit, but every infantry officer, more or less, like you have to go get your tab, because if you don't have a tab, that's weird.
Explain that to me.
So it's just like a secondary school, like that you go to. I mean, it's
Ranger
school.
It's Ranger qualified.
Yeah.
So you wear the
and
Ranger
to never get selected to go, from what I've seen from other Army bubbas, they've all said you got to basically be a shitbag to not get it. Like that, it would be embarrassing for a major to not have a Ranger tab.
Okay.
Who spent time. I mean, granted, most of his time was reservist, so maybe he didn't have the time to go to Ranger school when he's doing his other stuff.
Yeah.
But having somebody that's not even really super respected, I hate to say that, but not as respected as other infantry officers. And even though we've never said we don't like accolade shame, but other folks do. And you put somebody in that position that is the Secretary of the Department of Defense. That's a tough look.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really difficult thing. Obviously we all know I was an artillery guy, not an infantry guy, but to not have your tab is a very weird thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all I got.
I'll piggyback off that real quick.
Yeah.
Been a lot of discourse about his comments about women in combat. And it's just so tired, and it's just so pandering to people who really don't know much about the military and think it's like the movies when it's not. There are so many different jobs that are considered combat MOSs where women are incredibly valuable. We've proven time and time again we can do it. There's way more men who are not qualified to be in infantry right now than there are women who are qualified, if that makes any sense. Like, I've talked about, I'm one of the best leaders I served with in infantry. It was like 5'2", 80 pounds. And people are like, well, women can't, blah, blah, blah. Well, neither could that guy, honey. But he was a great leader still, and he was still really valuable in the infantry. Like, and there are women who can do that stuff and can meet the standards and whatever. But I also think it's so tired. There's this group that's like, you know why we failed in Afghanistan and why we're like struggling on the worldwide stage? We're so focused on like DEI like promotions and women in combat and blah blah. Really? You think that's why we failed in Afghanistan? It wasn't, oh, I don't know, like the trillions of dollars of missing shit we're talking about and stupid policies from the top from men. It was men the whole way through that designed that whole thing that fucking failed.
Drag us, mama.
You don't think it was men? You guys are the reason for all the biggest fuck ups in the military. But you want to point at the tiniest little thing that's a non-issue and say that's the reason that we're failing. We're a scapegoat yet again from this fucking moron. I'll say it. And it just sucks because the toxic culture against women in the military online has never changed. The military's never done anything about it. And this, from what I've seen, because I like live online in these circles, it has revved it up all over again. Even on comments that you're like the Yak, they posted on Veterans Day. They posted a video about you, and the comments, there was several that was like, Hesgeth is right. Women don't, like, she didn't actually do anything. She was just there to talk about women. And I was so proud of the guys that served with you that were like, fuck no, like, don't denigrate her. Like, that was awesome. And the amount of people, we look at a couple of the comments there and we're like, people are assholes. But a vast majority were like, go, Kate, go. Yeah, I've seen a lot of men defending and like a lot of leaders being like, well, actually, like, blah, blah, blah. It's such a tired argument at this point. I'm so tired of hearing it. And it's just really harmful to the military overall, especially when you're looking at recruiting and stuff right now. Women are staying in and completing the classes and like crushing it. You want to shit on that, dude, during a time when we need troops? Like, go ahead. I think you're a fucking douchebag. And I think it's a non-issue. It's like one of those little, like, barely an issue things that you're blowing up because you need, like. And if you saw that's the main coverage, why would you join? Like, if you know you do a great job and you see somebody like Kate that did a great job, is successful, and she gets shit on, where are you going to find respect? Well, I just hate being told. I know there's women that can hack it and can do it because they've been doing it. And I hate when some guy stands there and says, no, they can't. It's like, yes, we can, because we've been doing it for a long time. We may have not been able to say we're doing it, but women have been outside the wire doing combat ship for fucking ever. And it proof's in the pudding. Happened this week. Yeah. There was a woman, an Air Force pilot, who was given or awarded the Silver Star. It was one of only 10 times, I believe, that a woman has got a Silver Star. And even in comments about that, they were like, she only got it because she's a woman. A fucking Silver Star? Yeah. Like, how difficult. They don't hand those out. I'm here to tell you, they don't hand those out because they feel bad or like, oh, she did something that a man would have done, but we would have only given him X, but we gave her a Silver Star because she's a woman. Doesn't work like that. You rarely see and she was a captain. You rarely see a captain with anything above a Bronze Star. Insecure men running the system have resisted us the whole way through and made it 10 times harder for us to even. It's like, we'll meet our standards. It's like, well, then train us to the same fucking standards. Like, treat us the same and whatever. And like, we will rise to the occasion, but we haven't had those. I'm just, I'm over it. I'm so tired of you. I was like, I'm not even going to talk about it because I'm so tired of saying it. It's a non-issue, and the insecure men in the military issue is so toxic and so prevalent. So many men, just be proud of what you do and worry about yourself and lift up the other troops around you, whether they're a man or a woman, and do the best for your unit. And if there's women in your unit, fucking treat them like a sister, just like you treat your brothers, and you won't have as much of an issue. You're all pieces of shit. I hate you all. I'm over it. I want to clip that part. Yeah. Mine is, I can't believe Matt Gaetz is nominated to be the Attorney General. Like, that shit is so wild to me. Yeah. Maybe I didn't think anything would get me more than Hesgeth, but when you have a dude that has active investigations that he had, it's not have sex with a minor, it's rape a minor, that it was 17 years old, paid for it on Venmo, was a part of human trafficking. His best friend is in prison for 10 years for the same thing. And then he's going to be the chief law enforcer of the entire country. That shit is absolutely wild. That's why I feel like we're missing something. Like, Cons, you were saying it. Like, I feel like we're missing something.
I heard from a friend that is like higher up and like the policy side. This shit is scary. So there is a provision, because a lot of these appointees are pretty wild. Like most wouldn't get confirmed under a normal situation. Well, Mike Johnson is basically in Trump's pocket, and there is a procedure where they can stop one of the houses of government, like one part of the legislature, and then they can just do nothing but recess appointments. So let's say Gates doesn't get it, then he doesn't have to put one in, and he could pause Congress essentially, and then install the recess appointments. And the Senate already said that they were going to have indefinite recess appointments. So he could appoint, even if he doesn't get the people that he wants, he can appoint all of them and just have them in recess appointments. And think about what he did last time. I think there was 3 Department of Defense secretaries that were recess appointments, and they like Esper was a recess. I forget who the last one was that took over for him, but recess appointments.
So what's the point of this?
Yeah, but I saw something where like there's been like 20 presidents who have had recess appointments. So that's not something new.
No, but those recess appointments are different. It's not at the beginning of an administration, and it's whenever one of them resigns. And then typically a recess appointment is just recess in between the one that you want to put up for confirmation and not. That's how it's been used historically. That's not how it's used now.
No.
I don't know. I said to you guys when they all have been rolling in, it's just so odd to me that I have to be missing something. There's something else going on. Obviously, he created a lot of enemies with his first term, but I just don't understand some of them. Some of them, I guess, maybe make sense, but I mean, Hegseth didn't make sense to me. But I'll give him. We'll see what happens with him. Gates certainly didn't make sense.
Like 200 Republicans hate that motherfucker in the House of Representatives from his own party.
Do you think his plastic surgeon was thrilled?
Oh, also, probably. That's where Annalise is from, so they're gonna have to have a new person. I've also heard that if he doesn't, there is a plan. If Gates doesn't get this spot and they vote against it, that Ronnie D in Florida, the governor, will appoint Matt Gaetz as a senator. I've seen that too, because then there's nothing people could do about that.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yikes.
Hide your boner pills.
Yikes. Better note, finish the second book in Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I'm going to take a break between the third one. It's a lot, so taking a little break there. It's very good. Recommended. Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Okay.
Got it. My butthole is doing a little bit better today.
Oh, good. You're moving smoother.
Yeah, I had to go to the doctor again on Monday. I did a tiny little procedure, and I woke up this morning feeling way better. So I think that I'm looking up. Played golf yesterday, which was probably a terrible mistake.
Probably because it's just sudden movements in golf.
Lots of twists and turns.
Yeah, would be ripe for tears.
Yeah, it was bad. But otherwise, we'll see you again next week. Sound the Retreat.
All men are bad.